Grandpa Kevin's Christmas Trees, written and narrated by Kiriakos Vilchez. My Grandpa Kevin is a Christmas tree lot operator, and just like any other seasonal merchant looking to be successful, he needed a few workers to help him stay afloat each year. One year in particular, my grandpa was having a tough time trying to secure a good spot for his business. He couldn't find a leased space anywhere in town willing to negotiate on their price. It seemed as if more and more folks with money to spare were competing for the best lots in town, so he had to settle for a relatively unsavory location nobody wanted to use. Now, Grandpa Kevin wasn't a relatively fearful man, but even he realized that he had gotten the worst of the worst in terms of lot locations. His business would be operating in one of the seediest industrial parks in town, a massive lot adjacent to an abandoned toy factory that had been sitting in decay for decades. To make matters even worse, 2 people had gone missing from that very area last December, a detail that one of his workers made a not-so-subtle point in bringing up as we worked on our first day out there one chilly afternoon. "Kevin, they still haven't found those people," Dale said. "The police have even issued a statement saying people should be extra vigilant at night around here." Grandpa Kevin set down a large frosted snowman light-up statue at his feet, planting it in the snow as he secured it in place. He looked up at Dale as he worked. "Dale, I'm not going to go over this with you again. I just can't afford any other spot. This will have to do." Dale adjusted the beanie cap on his head. "I understand that, boss, but it's kind of freaking me out knowing that people just up and vanished in this area. I'm not gonna lie, this place scares the shit out of me." Grandpa Kevin shot Dale an annoyed look. "Come on, Dale. You're not making anybody feel any better. Jennifer and I agree with you, but we're just going to have to make the best of it. Plus, at least it's a big lot. Lots of room for our trees." Dale held up a hand. "Just saying, guys. We should keep our eyes open. Who knows what kind of weirdos hang around here at night." I gave Grandpa Kevin a look, and I noted a look of worry etched on his withered face. He shook his head, muttering under his breath before looking back at Dale. "Don't worry. We'll be okay. I'll make sure of it," he assured. We spent the next 7 or 8 hours on that freezing lot getting all the trees ready for our first night of business. The temperature seemed to drop dramatically as the moon rose in the night sky, accompanied by a gentle dusting of snow that covered our trees like frosting. Grandpa Kevin, Dale, the other worker named Arthur, and I took turns working the lot in pairs, while the other 2 stayed in the large operations tent we constructed. As the hours waned, not a single person showed up. It seemed even with Grandpa Kevin's word-of-mouth campaign and my aggressive signposting on my college campus and throughout town, nothing seemed to have paid off. I sat with my grandpa in the tent, the orange flames of the campfire outside casting an eerie glow on his tired features as we huddled close in its warmth. I rested my head on his shoulder. "Don't worry, Grandpa Kevin, it's the first night. Even if nobody shows up, we'll get the ball rolling." He smiled, lifting his thermos to his lips and taking a long sip of hot cocoa. "You know, your grandma always told me that if I wanted to stay doing this Christmas tree stuff, I should just move to the North Pole and hire some elves. Give Kris Kringle some competition." I laughed, shaking my head. "Guess so. Hey, Grandpa, what's the story on that gross building across the way, that factory?" He looked up. "What, you mean that old toy factory? It just went out of business. Nothing to tell." I took a swig of my own thermos before pointing at it in the distance, its dark silhouette reminding me of the tower spires of Dracula's castle. "Places like that just don't go out of business, Grandpa. There's got to be some kind of story." He gazed up at the monstrous form of the dilapidated building, then outside the tent, and then looked me in the eyes. "Well, I will tell you that I knew the man that owned that factory. Good businessman. He just seemed to lose it completely later in life." I tilted my head. "Lose it? Like what, his money?" He shook his head, scratching his salt and pepper goatee. "No, his mind. He began thinking he started believing he was Santa Claus." I raised my eyebrows. "Santa Claus? You've got to be kidding." He lowered his head, gazing at the fire. "No, I'm not. John Finch was his name. He started showing up to work at the factory just like Santa Claus, and even started addressing the workers as his elves to his associates. It got so bad he even started looking like the guy, with the long hair and beard and all that. Put on some weight, too. What the hell happened to this guy? I asked, intrigue swelling up in me. Grandpa Kevin glanced at me, then back at the old factory, his eyes gazing at it intently. Well, as the story went all those years ago, he snapped at one of his workers one day. During a very busy production season, he threatened to gut the woman like a fish if she didn't meet her quota or something like that. That same day, an employee went to go see him about his final paycheck, found old Finch hanging from the ceiling, still wearing that Santa suit. I gasped. Oh my God. I narrowed my eyes up at Grandpa Kevin. Why'd he kill himself? He rubbed his hands together. Nobody knows for sure, but rumor has it that he started hearing voices. Voices telling him who was naughty and who was nice. I covered my mouth, shaking my head. That's freaky, I uttered. But how did the business go under? He looked at me. Well, it gets even stranger. 2 weeks after Finch died, accidents kept occurring. Accidents? Grandpa Kevin clicked his tongue. Yup. Workers started dying. Falls, electrocution. Somebody even got crushed to death in one of the machines. After that, the executors of Finch's estate just shut the business down. Some people said they felt the place was cursed. Who knows? What the fuck? I said. Seeing my grandpa give me a disapproving look, I raised a hand. Sorry, I added. He chuckled. No, it is pretty messed up. A lot of the younger folks don't really know about the history of the toy factory. Your mother knows, but she never believed in the paranormal stuff. Nevertheless, the factory has been rotting here ever since. Well, damn, maybe I didn't want to know all that, I replied, now lost in thought. Grandpa Kevin nudged me playfully. Hey, don't get spooked on me too, kiddo. Dale is doing enough of that already. Besides, you don't believe in a vengeful wannabe Santa Claus ghost, do you? I giggled uncomfortably, still unsettled by the disturbing tale. No, not really. Speaking of that big chicken, where is Dale? And where is Arthur? They've been wandering around here for ever. Grandpa Kevin slowly stood up. Well, let's go find him. Think we should lock up and head home. Nobody's coming out here to buy a tree tonight. I nodded and we both exited the tent. We looked at the rows upon rows of Christmas trees, the concolor firs and Scotch pines casting dark shadows that crisscrossed across the ground. Out of the corner of my eye, I thought I saw somebody move near the very end of one of the rows, a fir's branches bristling as if someone had been shaking the tree, and then suddenly let it go. I peered into the darkness, but nobody was there. My grandfather must have seen it too, because he cupped a hand over his mouth. Dale! Arthur! You guys come on back! We're heading home! We both waited for a response, but all we heard was the wind rustling between the trees and the snow crunching beneath our boots as we shifted from one foot to the other, as the cold seemed to seep through our clothing and bite at our flesh. Grandpa Kevin was about to call out to them again when we heard what sounded like a twig snapping in the distance. I looked at Grandpa Kevin. He seemed to be nervous, which obviously frightened me, as this was a man who did not spook easily. I leaned closer to my grandfather. Wouldn't they respond? Your voice carries all the way down there. He nodded slightly and quickly turned to face me. Okay, Jennifer, this is what we're going to do. I don't know if they're screwing around or something else is up, but I want you to wait here for me. I shook my head furiously, grabbing his wrist. Grandpa Kevin, no. Don't go looking for them alone. What if it's some druggie or some crazy bum out there? He patted my head. I'll be fine, he said as he removed the large hunting knife on his belt. I have this in case anybody wants to mess with this old man. I looked back at the rows of trees, pleading internally for one of the guys to come back so my grandpa wouldn't have to go searching for them. I scanned the darkness, but nothing moved. It was so unnaturally quiet I was now scared. I quickly jumped into the canvas tent and retrieved 2 flashlights. My grandpa shaking his head disapprovingly. I pointed at him sternly. No. Don't even start. I am not going to let you go out in this huge tree maze by yourself, Grandpa. We're going together. Before he could protest, I put a flashlight in his hand and latched onto his arm. He grumbled, then nodded in agreement. We slowly made our way among the trees, shining our lights in every direction in search for Dale or Arthur. It seemed like minutes turned into hours as we searched for them, stopping every so often at the slightest noise we might have heard, somewhere. Finally, having traversed the length of the lot, we followed the chain-link fence back around to the front. As we passed a misshapen fir, I noticed a trail of red blotches in the snow that led away from the trees, and towards the compound gate of the old toy factory. I froze, making Grandpa Kevin direct his attention to his left boot. He gasped and slowly knelt down. His fingers grazing the liquid, he uttered a low cry when he realized what it was. "It's blood," he said, his eyes shifting around nervously. I began to tremble, a mixture of cold and fear laying waste on any fortitude for the situation I had left. He whirled to face me. "We need to leave, and we need to call the police, Jennifer. Something ain't right." I nodded slightly, and we broke into a careful run towards the front of our lot, turning off our flashlights as to not attract any attention to ourselves. We both cried out in surprise when we tripped and fell over something protruding from the base stand of a large spruce. I fell on my stomach, my face kissing the freezing snow as I heard Grandpa Kevin holler out in surprise. I quickly shot up and stifled my scream with a gloved hand. It was Dale, his upper body jutting out at an awkward angle from underneath the tree. His face was bloodied and lifeless, a pool of blood oozing from the back of his head where his skull had been split open like a cantaloupe. I grabbed my grandfather's arm and tried to speak, but I could not fight the ability to do so. I heard him mumble incoherently, my grandpa in a state of perpetual shock. As we stared at Dale's body, we heard a rustling coming from behind a tree up ahead. We froze, and whomever it was let out a deep groan. "Is that Arthur?" Grandpa Kevin slowly raised his knife. "I don't know. Stay close to me and don't make a sound." We cautiously crept around a few trees, attempting to flank whoever it was stumbling to our right. My grandpa peered through the evergreen bramble and gasped. He flashed me a look. "It's Arthur!" he whispered. He grabbed my hand and quietly moved towards Arthur, tapping the unsuspecting man on the shoulder. The worker cried out, spinning to face us and clutching his chest. "Jesus Christ, you guys scared the crap out of me!" Grandpa Kevin glared at him angrily. "Keep your damn voice down. We need to get the hell out of here," he whispered furiously. Arthur rubbed the back of his head. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry. I went to take a leak, and I slipped and hit my head somehow. How long was I out?" "Long enough," I said. "We just found Dale. He's dead." Arthur's eyes widened. "What the hell are you talking about? You guys are fucking kidding, right?" Grandpa Kevin grabbed the man by the scruff of his collar. "Listen, damn it! Somebody just killed him and we found him tucked under some trees. His head had been hacked open. We need to get to the police, man." Arthur looked at us, his eyes now filled with panic. "Jesus fucking Christ! God, okay, let's get out of here. Oh my God!" Grandpa Kevin pulled him closer. "Listen, son, if some psychopath is hiding out here, we have to keep our wits about us. We need to move fast and as quiet as possible. We're going to get the hell out of here, understand?" Arthur gulped, casting me a fearful look before nodding. Yeah, okay, I'm sorry, let's go." Grandpa Kevin nodded, and three of us crept through the trees. I could feel my heart thundering in my chest as my ears picked up at every sound in the vicinity. The lone hoot of an owl nearby almost caused me to jump out of my skin as I gripped my grandpa's arm. I could see my staggered breath as we inched closer and closer to our operations tent. As I saw the glow of the campfire break through the reaching limbs of the firs and spruces, I breathed a sigh of relief. The canvas tent was quiet, only the crackle of the fire breaking the silence as we shuffled over to it. Shaking, Arthur motioned to the vehicle. "All right, guys, let's go." Grandpa Kevin nodded, and we began running over the truck when a strange blast of wind knocked the three of us into one another. As we clambered to our feet, snow whipping at our faces, I heard what sounded like the jingle of bells. They were faint enough that it seemed to float away almost as soon as their chime hit my eardrums. But Grandpa Kevin and Arthur heard it too, and they looked around in a panic. I turned and faced a sentinel-like army of trees at attention, looking for the eerie source of what I had heard. Then, something slowly moved into our line of vision that terrified me beyond belief. There, peering at us as he stood near a large pine, was the gray, rotting face of a man donning a filthy, time-worn Santa Claus outfit. His head twitched like a bird, blinking twice at me with coal-like eyes. His wild locks of hair fell past his shoulders and blew casually in the wind as he crept toward us like a jungle cat. He gave me an impossibly wide grin, blood dripping down from his purplish lips onto his long white beard. He held a bony finger to his lips, instructing me to be quiet, as he raised what appeared to be a hatchet. A pained, yet horrified expression passed over Grandpa Kevin's face, his trembling hand gripping his knife defensively. Oh my God, John Finch, he uttered. Arthur bolted for the truck and the two of us followed, screaming at the top of our lungs. The gruesome Santa Claus charged after us, twisting and contorting as he bounced across the ground like a deranged marionette. We climbed into the truck with haste, and Grandpa Kevin shoved his key into the ignition. As he put the Dodge Ram into reverse, smashing into the side of the chain-link fence as he turned to get onto the main road, the bearded ghoul leapt onto the hood of the truck. As he stared at us, his head moving in that sickening avian way once more, twitching and turning, he bared his serrated teeth at me. He raised his hatchet over his head, bringing it down on the windshield. My grandfather kept driving as this monster hacked away at the windshield, the aggressive swerving of the vehicle not causing him to fly off at all. It cackled at us, taunting what deemed our futile attempt at escape. I tried to cover my ears and shut out its deranged laughter. Arthur was doing the same, screaming incessantly. I looked at Grandpa Kevin and he did something I did not expect. He steadied his right hand, clutching the handle of the hunting knife, and quickly rolled down his window. Before Arthur or I could protest this crazy move, he glared at the grotesque being and whistled. It stopped for a moment, tapping its fingers on the windshield as it stared at my grandpa, blinking as it turned its head from side to side. "John Finch!" Grandpa Kevin hollered. The creature silently scuttled like an insect towards the driver's side window, making croaking sounds that seared my eardrums. I watched as it hissed and lunged for my grandfather's eyes focused on him hungrily. In one swift motion, however, my grandfather plunged his knife into the monster Santa's left cheek, causing the foul thing to cry out like a wounded animal and collapse off of the truck. Not wasting any time, Grandpa Kevin spun the vehicle and raced down the road. I looked back through the small cab window and saw the being crouched in the middle of the road, watching us intently, his eyes like two burning coals. He vanished before my very eyes, swallowed up by the darkness. I turned to face my grandfather. Oh my God! It was him? What the hell is he? Grandpa Kevin kept his eyes on the road. He's been dead for years. That thing used to be John Finch. I don't know what the hell it is. Arthur shook in his seat, still trying to recover from the ordeal. But he looked at you like he recognized you. Grandpa Kevin cleared his throat, casting me a quick glance as his hands shook on the steering wheel. Remember that employee I told you about in the story? The one who found him? That was me. We sat in silence until we reached the police station, telling them everything that happened as soon as we got there. Arthur, Grandpa Kevin, and I never went back to that lot after that night, and my grandfather ended up selling it to the first bidder that wanted to buy everything in it. Grandpa Kevin never sold a single Christmas tree ever again.